I want to talk here about what we need to focus a lot more attention on than we do, which is the fundamental dark reality that has been exposed by the 2024 election. Not that it wasn't at all visible, but now we see how huge a price we're going to be paying for where the real problem lies at this point in our history, and that's with the American people. I say that as one who has just a few days ago made a video in which I talked about how this rise of a destructive force in this nation was essentially facilitated by propaganda. That is true. I believe that whereas the slave power got so destructive in the 19th century because of a big issue that was hard to resolve peacefully over slavery. And whereas the Nazi regime was the result of a series of national traumas that led to a lot of brokenness in the German people that tipped them over into fascism of the most vile nature. But with what's happened to the Republican Party in our times, I think that the force that broke things was the force of propaganda from Rush Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich, Fox News, Karl Rove, and onward to Trump. Which means that there are some very capable people working to transform the consciousness of a large number of American citizens. But now, in fact, for the past decade, that transformation had gone so far in the state of the people that it became the reservoir of American brokenness. It created a Republican base that someone like Donald Trump could come in and hijack. He could get that Republican base to nominate him for the presidency, even though a generation before, someone like him would have been completely unthinkable to conservative America. So the problem had been transformed from the rise of whatever that force is, I won't go into that here, that launched all that propaganda to change the conservative America into something that would support fascism. Nonetheless, what we see in 2015, 2016 is that campaign had already progressed so far that someone who had all the qualities that our founders would have said are exactly what you got to keep away from the presidency, they looked at him and they thought, oh, that's what we want. So he gets nominated by the Republican Party, conservative America, and various other factors take this unthinkable guy and put him in the presidency. Meanwhile, in the past years since he became president, on January 20th, 2017, he's exposed all the ugliness beyond what I thought he was plenty ugly back when he beat Hillary Clinton. I was ashamed to be an American. I didn't like the feeling. But now what we know, what we all know, what's been out there in the public arena all this time, shows him to be even worse than I think most people would imagine. I certainly will confess that I did not think it was going to be like this. So the propaganda had a great effect. And now we've got an American electorate that when confronted with the choice that was well dramatized by both candidates about you can get this or you can get the opposite of this on a whole host of dimensions, including honesty and versus lying, and including division versus bringing people together, including cooperation rather than ceaseless conflict, respect for the rule of law against the lawlessness, a willingness to be limited by the Constitution versus a clear intention to trample on the limits of the power if he's elected. All those choices were laid out as clear as could be before the American people. And the catastrophe is that we'd reached the point in terms of the state of consciousness of the American people where confronted with this stark set of contrasts, which according to a lot of our civilization's traditional ways of thinking about things, would say it was pretty much of a contrast between good and evil. And the American people chose evil. Now, doesn't that tell you there's something really big there? There's something seriously wrong in the American people. Now, I've talked with a lot of people it didn't take Trump's winning here to show that there was a problem. In fact, I ran for Congress in 2011, 2012, because I already thought that there was a problem. I happened to wrongly think that if I took my life's work as a truth teller out into my Republican corrupted district, I could bring them back to the better angels of their nature. But I ran a decent campaign. Google Schmuckler, my name, and Labor Day, and you can see a speech of mine that went viral. But I was wrong in thinking that there was a way to bring them back from where they were, doing what I did a decent job of doing, which was telling the truth about what the Republican Party was becoming. There is a problem there, and I've talked with people about it, and people, I think, maybe even a majority of people will immediately say, well, they live in an information bubble. If all you watch is Fox News, and a lot of these people only watch Fox News, you're just not going to know what's going on. And they're quite right that Fox News has been a powerful force. And they're quite right that Fox News is it's a propaganda network, and propaganda in a pejorative sense, because they continually paint a false picture. And it's a false picture that has the effect of increasing people's fears and increasing their rage and all the stuff that help make the world more broken. So that's all true. But I don't think that that's the most important way of seeing the problem now. And people these days are rightly aware that Trump won this election in large part by getting the lion's share of the votes of people who really didn't know much of anything. No information voters, low information voters, he was able to get them out for him. So you got the people who are misinformed by Fox and the people who don't know nothing. I'll tell you why I think that's not the right way to look at it, because I think both of those things are true. But I don't think that even with those things in mind, there's any plausible way of saying that people went to the polls without, if they don't know that they're voting essentially for a force of brokenness and for ugly stuff, there's something wrong with them if they don't know it. Because even if all you're watching is Fox News, you are going to see stuff that make it quite clear. I mean, if you're thinking straight, if you're perceiving straight, if you care about the things that need to be cared about, you're going to know about Donald Trump. Even if you don't have the wealth of information to indict Donald Trump as being like the worst conceivable person to be president that a regular viewer of MSNBC might be. You're going to see so much stuff, so much. You're going to, if you don't pick up, I mean, it was obvious before the 2020 election that he all the polls showed he was going to lose unless there was some big change. And it showed him preparing to claim that the election had been stolen from him, to claim election fraud. I mean, it was quite out there in front. I wrote about it. I think that if you just, Fox News carries all the stuff he's doing. If you got a brain in your head, you realize that the stuff he's saying doesn't make sense. I mean, mail-in voting has been going on all this time. There's something gone wrong in the head when you don't know. And likewise, so it should have been obvious to anybody, even watching Fox News, that this stolen election thing, this big steal, this stop the steal, the big lie, was just a big lie. It was just and when you realize that that's a lie, it exposes just, you couldn't have a worse person than somebody who's willing to overthrow the Constitution to hold on to power for himself. I mean, we've gone through over 2 centuries of history. People have been very unhappy to lose these elections, but nobody ever did what he did. And it was obvious what he did. I mean, 60 court cases and it's all thrown out. How little can you know? Unless there's something gone wrong in your head about how you know anything, or about whether you even care that the guy's fomenting an insurrection. So between the I don't know and the I don't care, there's something wrong either way. And as for the low information or no information voters, I mean, it's true that I've been paying a lot of attention to this, and if I had the memory, I could write volumes about just how terrible Donald Trump is in terms of every basic American value. But even if you're just living in the country for the last decade, unless you're off in some little cabin off the grid in the middle of the Rocky Mountains or something like that, like the Unabomber, unless you're completely cut off from the world. Donald Trump is a guy who, I think, if there were standings from American history of how much attention has anybody gotten, presidents, baseball stars, movie stars, all kinds of people have gotten a lot of attention. But if there was going to be a legitimate contest, Donald Trump, I believe, has probably gotten more attention than anybody in history, the history of the United States for sure, and maybe all of history. I mean, he keeps the spotlight on him. He's almost a genius at grabbing attention. And he's been out there. I mean, people like me, we're just sick of hearing about this guy. I've studied various lives and I've focused on people who are sort of heroic to me, like Lincoln and FDR and Churchill. When I was running for Congress, I read these things because I wanted to have an image and a sense of the heroic role that can be played by a great leader. Here we got Donald Trump. And people are following him with a degree of passion that I don't think we've seen in any previous leader-follower relationship in the history of the country, at least not at a major level. So here we've got the American people exposed to so much of what Donald Trump says and does. I don't know this for sure, but I would bet that even a almost no information person living in this country and not, uh, being engaged in the world should know at least enough, more than enough, to know that Donald Trump represents the opposite of pretty much all the values that have been embedded in American culture, both at the level of morals and religion and on up into the level of, the kind of virtue that our founders hoped to have in our democratic system. I mean, it's just too obvious not to know. And the whole Republican world's been virtually a rogues gallery in this last generation of I mean, the conduct of W in the presidency, unless there is something wrong with your ability to see things, was pretty reprehensible in some very fundamental ways. But if there's something wrong, then you don't see it. The American people were quite adequately shown what they were choosing. And they chose something which essentially aligns with all our traditional notions of evil. The birth of Jesus at this crucial moment in Christianity, the message goes up: peace on earth, goodwill toward men. That's the vision of the basic moral values of Christian civilization. And what does Donald Trump obviously represent? Not peace on earth, the opposite. Makes a conflict out of everything. Never interested in joining hands to cooperate. Making a fight. Demonizing the enemy. The opposite of goodwill toward men. Enmity, hostility, sending out insults, inciting violence. It's not hard to see. Yet the American people either didn't see, which means there's something wrong about how they come to understand what's happening around them. And that would have to be addressed. Or they see, but they don't care. They are more or less consciously attracted to the cruelty, the hate, the destructiveness, the lawlessness, that there's something in them that can see that that's what he is, and they voted for him. Between those two, in both cases, there's something fundamentally wrong with the people. And we've gotten to the point where 50%, basically, 49.9, whatever it is, voted for that. Even if he had lost, flipped around, and he had lost with 48 point something percent like Kamala got, that would be a huge red flag. I mean, it has been for some years. Why are these people supporting this guy? And I want to say that liberal America has not been asking these questions in any way that leads to the kind of insight that we need. So this is a question we need to be asking more. Well, what can be done to bring the American people, whose state of consciousness is now such that roughly half of us will choose evil? What can be done moving from here into the future, where we come back to an America in which the power of evil in the society was much less than this. This is extraordinary in American history. Talked about the slave power and the drive into the Civil War. That was extraordinary too. But this is very ugly to have an American people given that choice, and something's wrong with them enough that they would choose evil. What would that have been like, say, in Eisenhower's years when I was, from between 4 and 14? Well, I guess 6 and 14. In Eisenhower's years, the power of evil, I would say, at the national level, I mean, there was the Jim Crow South still going on, which was no small thing. But at the national level, in terms of where is the power located to be at the helm of the country, and whether it was a Democratic administration like Truman's or a Republican administration like Eisenhower's, the people who were brought in and the sensibility at the top, and what the people were supporting and rewarding, were all way further than just neutral. They were all in the direction of making the world a better place. That's not true in America now. And that's because the American people, who had it in their hands to do what the Supreme Court should also have done, but it's occupied territory by the fascist force, and so they did what they did to protect the criminal from being held accountable. The American people said, the judges aren't going to save us. The people, the voters must. Well, they didn't. And that requires a whole lot of attention that liberal America has, for various reasons, which I won't go into here, simply failed to apply to it. I live in the Shenandoah Valley, surrounded by people who are infected with this state of consciousness. Don't necessarily understand it, but I'm here, and I see it, and I'm continually trying to bring attention to, we've got a problem here in conservative America. They have become the chief reservoir of evil. It was the people who nominated Trump in 2015-16. It was the people who resurrected him from the political dead when after the second impeachment, after the insurrection. The Republican Party wanted to leave him behind. You could see that in both McConnell and McCarthy. But very soon they found that the people were going to stay with Trump, even if that meant rejecting the Republican Party. The people chose him again. And now this guy who's basically, he's shown where he's coming from, like nominating a guy like Gates to be Attorney General. I mean, that's just sort of like an indication of just how ugly and how broken the wielding of power is going to be in America, so long as he gets his way. That is so huge in historic terms. This is so catastrophic a moment. And it all happened because of the state of consciousness that got so deeply established and so widespread in the American people. If we want to ever have a healthy country again, we're going to have to look into and try to use some kind of understanding and good human feeling, whatever it takes to bring the American people back to more of a historical norm about how broken they are, how much the most broken things can get their allegiance. We're at a high watermark, and it's not clear when we're going to be able to bring it down. But I think the beginning of the job is to understand what's gone wrong with the American people, and then to ask, Well, how do we deal with that? I'll be back to talk more about, I'm going to read a piece that's very important to me called When Evil Rises Among the People. I wrote it and published it as a newspaper op-ed in 2019. And it's deeply meaningful to me because it expresses my agony about what's happened to my countrymen. I'm not happy to see that we could ever be like this. It's been very disturbing to me. And this was my best attempt to express my feelings in a newspaper that would be going to be read by the people I felt so agonized about how they'd become something ugly. I had loved them in the 1990s when I did talk radio with them. So I've watched evil rise among the people, and it's been very disturbing. But that's what we got to deal with. They're the main reservoir of evil now, having been made that way by the broken force of the Koch brothers and all the rest that gave us this propaganda to make the conservative people of conservative America something that could be enlisted and manipulated by a force of fascism. It's a national task. Liberals should also ask themselves, why have we paid so little attention to what was happening to these people? And that's been another theme of mine. It's got to do with understanding the nature of the forces at work in our world, and that sometimes there's such a thing as a coherent force that's consistently working to make the human world worse. And I say that's a good definition of evil, because that's how evil has been said to work. So the transformation of the American people into whatever it is that we've got out there, and I don't claim to understand it, really. I mean, I understand some things about it. What is it that makes the American people so broken? I don't know how it is, but we can see how broken it is. They just elected about the ugliest presidential candidate you could imagine. What does that say about what's going on in the American body politic? All right, I'll be back. Thanks. And if you'd subscribe or like or any of those other kinds of encouragements, if you're interested in finding how I lay things out when I'm plying my craft of laying it out systematically so that it really proves certain things to be true, please go to my website, abetterhumanstory.org, where I lay out an integrated picture of the nature of the forces that work in the human world, including the kind of force that we have seen take over the conservative America and now threaten to destroy American democracy. Thanks. Bye-bye.